Welcome back to The Unknown Angler. So today we're going to do a T-Rex, which is an articulated fly. I'm going to start off with the Gamakatsu's B10S's, a size 1 and a 2/0 for the front hook. So we're going to start off with a 1 in the back. We're going to use some Ultra Thread. This is the 140. Now, one thing to be careful of with these hooks is they are super sharp. They're also great in the salt. They are saltwater hooks, or at least they work out well in the salt. I was using them all last year and they work fantastic. Coat the entire shank with some thread. And then we're going to take 4 hackles, 4 very long hackles. These are saddle hackles. So I took all those 4 hackles, I cut them to length. What I did was I matched up the tips, cut the backs, so they're all exactly the same length. These turned out to be about 5 inches long, depending on where you get your saddles. And you can tie them in however you would like. We're tying them flat, and once those hackles are tied in, use a little crinkle mirror flash. I don't overflash this fly, mainly because there's going to be a lot of flash when I add in the brushes. There's a lot of flash in the brushes. So just 2 pieces. In this case, there's going to be 3 pieces because it just so happens that I grabbed 3, not 2. Not a big deal. And I cut those off. Oops. Cut those off about a 1/2 inch before the end of the feathers. Make sure those are wrapped in, tied in well. For this particular fly, I'm going to use 2 different brushes. One has a core that's a 1-inch core on it. And what I mean by the core, the EP fibers in the core, I laid down at 1 inch. And the front one has a core of 1.5 inches. It's kind of hard to see on the video, but this has a thinner core than the one up front. And the reason for that is I want this to be more slender in the back, and I want it to be a little bit more bulbous out front. Anyway, tie in your brush at the back, wrap to the head of the fly. I like to tease out my dubbing brush just a little bit. When you get to the front, use your bodkin to pick that out a little bit. Get all those useless fibers out of the way where you're tying in. And then tie off 2. I like to do a 1/2 hitch right here. While I'm picking this out, I'm going to finish tying the head of that. half of the fly. And first of all, that's close to 6 inches, if not 6 inches long. The feathers were about 5 inches long. And that's the back end of your fly right there. And has a nice bullet-shaped head on it, which is great. Okay, now we're going to tie the front half of the fly. Going to go to the 2-aught. We are going to tie in, I like this knottable nylon coated stainless steel. This is 26 pounds, 12 kilograms. I'm going to tie this full length of the hook. Going to use a little red bead here. These are 6mm beads, red ones. I buy them in a craft store. You get 1,000 of them that way for like $2. You can buy them fly tying stores too. You don't get quite as many and it costs you about twice as much. Anyway, little red bead. Thread your fly on. The back half of your fly, go back through the bead. And pull forward. And you just want a little area there. Make a couple of wraps over. Make sure you have your situated correctly. Perfect, right about there. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to take the back end of this. I have a little rubber band on my vise. I'm going to put the rubber band over there so it holds the back end of that fly, so it doesn't joggle all around on you when you're trying to tie everything on. All right. A little bit of super glue. Now I like to put this on at this point because this will soak in very well, but I'm also going to tie over the top of it, which is going to make that top piece sit very nicely. Excuse me, the top piece of wire. I'm going to pull this over here. And tie it down and back. Cut that off now. There you have the front portion of your fly. Now, before I go putting the brush on, I'm going to make sure that super glue is either dried or wiped off. Putting a brush on with super glue is not a good idea. Perfect. Is a Flashabou brush. You've seen me tie this. There's 3 reasons for putting this on. The first is that coating this whole hook shank with a craft fur brush really bulks it out. You don't want to see that much bulk. Number 2, this actually does a pretty darn good job of covering up the wire and the bead that's in the back. And we're only going to make 3 or 4 turns here. We're not going to put a ton up. But the third reason is that this is a little stiffer than the craft fur brush that you're about to put on. And it forms a cone shape back here, which will allow the brush to be a little more bulbous at the back end instead of going completely over the connection here. It'll bulge out over the connection, which makes for a really nice articulation point. And no pun second. So once again, you covered up your connection. You've used up about 1/3 of the hook shank. You have about 2/3 of the hook shank left up here that we're going to put on. And you've created a nice cone shape that the craft fur brush is going to ride up on. And the craft fur brush we're going to use also has an EP fiber head, or I should say an EP fiber core, not head. It's got an EP fiber core that is a little bit bigger. Not a whole lot. It's a 1 inch to 1 1/4, and it may sound like, geez, that's nothing. Well, it's nothing in the size, but it's a big difference in the way it flares out. So this will flare at the head of the fly more than it will at the back of the fly, which gives you a nice taper to your fly, which is what you're trying to get. When you're all done, this fly should be anywhere from 7 to 9 inches long, depending on the size of the hackles you used at the back. If you use 7-inch hackles, it'll be a 9-inch fly. If you use 5-inch hackles, it'll be a 7-inch fly. I believe I use 5-inch hackles. It's about a 7-inch fly right now. The other part too is we're using these 2 stinger hooks. These stinger hooks are much lighter than my regular tarpon hooks that I would use, but they also have a much bigger hook gap too, which means the 2/0 here is equivalent to probably somewhere around a 4/0 tarpon hook, which means great hook set. And the fact that it's a pretty decent wire gauge means that you'll have a good hook set, but it'll also be a strong enough hook where you can land the fish. Years ago, hasn't happened recently, but years ago, it used to be you'd open up hooks all the time. There's no reason to have a hook open up on you these days unless you're using far too small a hook for the fish you're actually trying to take. The new hooks these days, especially these, are well tempered and well made enough to land some of the biggest fish. Anyway, a couple of the normal little whip finish there so that I can pick out the head of this fly. Let's see what that looks like. These particular eyes, and you know what? They're not a bad size for this fly. If I had bigger, I'd use bigger, but not too bad. And I like to comb this out just a little bit, using this before with an eyebrow brush, just to make sure all those fibers are heading straight back. In here. Like a 5-turn whip finish, I do 2. I'm just used to doing them. Last thing I want is for a fly to come undone on me. I don't know how well this is coming out, but this is looking pretty good right now. You have all the hairs out of the way, ready to go. I put a drop of UV epoxy right on top of the eye. Gives it a nice 3D effect. Extend out, go over to the, this is the very thin stuff. This is the loon. I like the loon, it's thin. Gets into the web. Gets into the thread, sorry. Okay, let's take a look at this bad boy. There we go. That is a truly massive fly. That one is 7 inches, so it did come out to be 7 inches long. And trust me, in the water, that really moves nicely. Anyway, good luck out there. See you next time.